what is your viewpoints on Robin DiAngelo? How did what have you read that book that
Yeah, I've
she
got the book right here somewhere.
well,
Yeah, I have.
what do you think about that?
I really like the book myself. I think I'm in the minority of people who like that book in general. I know a lot. Most people I know don't like that book or don't really like her. But I did like it. And I do find the work that she's doing valuable. Really, what I like most about her book is the story that she told. Not really kind of the stuff about whiteness that she talks about, which I think is still pretty good and useful for a certain person. For me, it's not that useful, so that's not really what I focus on. But what
Mm-hmm.
I like is her story. And she tells a story very similar to the one that you and I have told about our own selves in terms of a racial awakening.
Mm-hmm.
She got studied the history of race. She studied the origins of race, race through the generations, and then she started sharing what she learned with groups of racialized white people. And it's their reaction to her telling what
Mm-hmm.
she learned that
Mm-hmm.
inspired her to write that book. This fragile reaction that
Mm-hmm.
people, emotion fueled, willful, ignorant, holding on, desperately holding on to an illusion that she would come into over and over. And she started seeing patterns in the ways that people would do that. And her whole book is based on her experience over and over having these things happen and that pattern behavior that she expressed and kind of like, I guess you could say, categorized,
Mm-hmm.
and what she believes people should do to break out of it, and why she thinks it's important for people to break out of it. So that's the way that she shows up as an anti-racist. And I appreciate that. I applaud her for that. Although, you know, what's frustrating for me about her is, you know, the conflict of interest that she knows exists that's inherent in the work that she does. She has profited quite a lot off doing this work. And she knows that other people who are not racialized white people are not profiting as much as she is off doing the same work, maybe even doing it better than her. And she knows all that and she's aware of that. She's talked publicly and openly about that, but she's still doing it. And I don't know that she has made the proper changes to what she's doing that I would think would reflect growth in that particular context. That's my one
What kind of
criticism of her.
what kind of changes should she make?
I think she needs to realize that she needs to use the platform and the prestige that she's gained to raise people of color up who are doing the same work that she is. And I don't think that she's gotten to that point.
Interesting.
So what do you
Uh,
think about it? You tell me what you think. Have you read the
I,
book?
no, I haven't read the book, but I've so during 2020, I think that's when she got big. I was this close to buying it. I was reading excerpts from it, and I was like, this is probably one of the worst things I've ever read in my life.
Well, the excerpts were probably compiled to make you think that way.
Probably so. Probably so. But there was enough for me because that it kind of brought up I would say some past experiences with white people trying to wake to their racial consciousness or whatever. The way I see it, and it just and the way you describe anti-racism is so different than what I've experienced from most people who say they're anti-racist. I think most of that is probably because I don't think I've ever talked to a black person who said that they're anti-racist, right? So I don't, and I'm open to having that conversation, but at the same time, when I hear some of the things, you know what, I did see a lot of her interviews, and I read some inserts, but I saw a lot of her interviews, and I was just like, no, I don't want no parts of that. And it wasn't the thing that I didn't like about it, and this is probably why it's better to hear a black person discuss this than her, is because from her angle, what I got from her interviews was that she's trying to tell white people that they're racist they're inherently racist, and then there's this implicit bias thing going on, which, lo and behold, is kind of true. But my point, I'm a practical person. My point is, why does that matter? Why? What am I going to do with that information? And I think this is probably the core of my viewpoint of the racial thing is that yes, these things exist, but and maybe this is my upbringing, the way I internalize racial issues is that this is just another thing that people do, good or bad, and it really doesn't affect me that much. And it didn't affect me, but maybe I'm seeing it affect others, but it's like, what does that have to do with me? How is that? I wrote a really great blog on this. I have the tools to succeed in my life, and that's what I want to focus on. This racial stuff that y'all are talking about, it's fine, and a lot of people need that, but that's not something I need because that's not something that has affected my life to that degree. I don't wake up in the morning thinking about that kind of stuff. I don't associate with people um who think about race that way or racist. If I do encounter someone racist, my experience is they're probably not that smart, and maybe that's me dehumanizing them, as you say. Um, that's been my experience. So to hear D'Angelo say certain things, such as these people they didn't recognize that they had this implicit bias about these black people. I'm like, well, I mean, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I don't understand what does that matter in that situation. How does that affect me, or how does that affect the black person that's in that situation? It felt very religious to me. That's what it felt like.
Interesting.
If that makes sense. Yeah, it felt real. It felt real because what you're pretty much saying. The my perception of her interviews was that we're all sinner. It's sort of like I said, as Jehovah's Witness, another thing you have to do is you have to study all the other religions. And even in Jehovah's Witnesses, like they're all religions all do kind of the same thing. It's like we're all sinners and we all have to constantly repent, or we have to constantly do this thing to make ourselves whole or pure again. And that's what it felt like to me. It felt like she was telling white people, y'all are racist, y'all will always be racist, and you have to constantly, I don't know, flog yourself in order for you to rid yourself of this implicit bias, which is like, that's a lot. Again, that's a lot of time and energy to be spent on something. It's like, why don't you just become a Christian and like believe in Jesus? Like, isn't that an easier path than this stuff? That's the way I thought about it.
I would say that those paths are not divergent. Like they're not different. So like you're like, isn't this an easier way? That is the way. Like I think the point is, well, there's a lot of points.
Because Jesus told us to love thy neighbor. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, no, I don't think there is anything wrong with that. I think her point is implicit bias can get in the way of loving your neighbor. You said, what impact can it have?
Right. Yeah, you're right.
That is the impact. It will stop you from loving your neighbor. And so, like, if you want to love your neighbor, she does talk about this in the book. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you read it, then you'll find out the answers. Because what she does talk about is that, if that's what you really want, is to have community with people who are not racialized as white, then you have to deal with this problem. Like, it's a necessary element of getting what you say you want.
Well, the thing about it, and here's another thing. She was saying that as though this is a new problem, but I'm like, I've been like I was raised in this religion. Black and white people got along with each other.
Listen, man, when black people were slaves in this country, there were black and white people getting along. All right, so like, I mean, it's just She's not saying that, okay? Like, I don't think you can really know what she's saying without having read it. I have to say that, okay?
You're right. I mean, I'm not going to
She
deny
definitely
that.
didn't
I'm
say
just
she wants
saying
people to be flogging themselves, or she
from her
even
interviews,
says the
I have
opposite
to
of
go to
something you
YouTube
attributed to her right now.
because I had a lot of time and I was like I was like reading her interviews and like the stuff she was saying. I was like, I get what I see, kind of see what she's saying, but I'm like, what like what's wrong with being a Christian and reading the Bible? Like I don't understand
Nothing. I don't know. I don't know
why.
why you think it's this dichotomy of like either you deal with implicit bias or you become a Christian and read the Bible. It's not like one or the other.
Well,
It's
I'm not saying it's one or the other, but I'm saying that the Bible covers that. The Bible tells you love thy neighbor. If you okay, let's say that the Bible says love thy neighbor, and then you go out and you're like you have racist thoughts like, oh, I don't like that person or something like that. Then yeah, like the Bible tells you, you're constantly sinning and you're going to like have those ideas or thoughts or whatever, but you always have to come back to love thy neighbor. You know what I'm saying? Like you're a sinful person. I'm like, well, what is she saying that is um more important than that?
I don't think she thinks that what she's saying is more important than that. I think what she's
Mhm.
saying is in line with that. What she's
Okay.
doing is narrowing it down to specifically the race context. Like, think
Okay.
about that larger message and just thinking about it in a race context, and that's her book. That's what she's talking about. Like, not as like a holistic, this is how you exist as a human, but if you want to exist as somebody, let's say walking the path of Christ, if you want, or following the Bible, specifically in a race context, these are the
Uh-huh.
things you need to do as a person who has been brought up in a country and in a system of white supremacy. This is a necessary path you have to walk. You know, the same way that the Bible teaches you a path you have to walk for your entire existence as a person in this world, if you want to be someone who is loving thy neighbor, who is following the teachings of Christ, these are things
Hmm.
that you need to do. She's doing the same thing in a more narrow context, a specific
Interesting.
context. Thanks for watching. For access to the full-length conversation and all of the 2-hour-long unedited conversations that I've had on race, click the support link in the description below. Thanks for your support and see you next time.